Friends, I welcome you to my channel. Before listening to this story, I will ask you to like and subscribe. It is not difficult for you, but it is pleasant for me. And we're starting. Winter came again, and Adele decided that she had found her betrothed. According to Mom, he is very pleasant, always ready to make jokes and quite cute. Something in his face made me grind my teeth, but she seemed happy, and I chalked it up to misplaced devotion to my old friend. They started dating in the fall, and by February he was already living in her apartment, and she confessed to her mother that she was expecting a ring soon. I wasn't thrilled with the news, but if she's happy, then I'll be happy for her. Then cracks began to appear. He lost his job and was in no hurry to find a new one. After all, Adele has enough money for both of them. At first, it was money for gas while he was looking for a job. Then she connected him to her phone data plan and paid the bill. If they wanted to go somewhere, it was always at her expense. One day she was in a bad mood at work and I asked her why. She told me about herself and then blurted out, "He says you and I can't have lunch together anymore." He said it was not nice for a woman in a serious relationship to spend so much time with another man. I took a deep breath and tried not to blurt out what I was thinking, but I was pretty harsh. We've been friends for 15 years, long before he came along. If you want to give up this friendship, I have no choice but to agree, but I have to say that it would suck. I didn't interfere in your relationship, but I have to tell you this. This guy is a loser, Adele. Tell him that if he doesn't want you to go to lunch with friends, then he should do something, for example, get a job and pay his own bills, and then spend all the extra money on you. Maybe I should take you to lunch myself several times a week at my own expense. I'm sorry, honey, but the cards are open, and to tell you the truth, I can't stand him. You'd be a fool to marry him, and if you do, don't wait for me at the wedding. Good luck, you'll need it. I got up and left in the middle of the meal, and the last thing I saw was her sitting at the table, bright red with her mouth open. The next few times when she invited me to lunch, I excused myself by saying that I was too busy for that. Every time she saw me at work, she looked like she was about to cry. Then it happened. We were experiencing one of the rare snowstorms, and I was sitting in front of the fireplace, alternately looking at the flames and the snow falling outside, when a car pulled up to my entrance. I wondered who could have gone outside during this storm. There was about 8 centimeters of snow on the ground, and Southerners are not famous for their ability to drive a car in the snow. I tried to stay off the roads, not because I can't drive in such conditions, but because 90% of my neighbors can't. After the snowfall, I laughed my head off, seeing all these cars in the ditch. Sometimes he took a tow rope, put the car on all-wheel drive, and drove around the area, pulling people out. He did not take money, but he never refused cookies or cake from grateful wives. When I opened the door, I saw Adele getting out of the car, but instead of rushing inside, she was walking slowly. I dragged her into the house and was shocked when she raised her head. Her left eye was swollen and had already turned purple. She walked slowly because she had a huge bruise on her ribs, which made it difficult to breathe. I sat her down by the fire, took off her soaked sweatpants and sweater, wrapped her in blankets, and gave her a towel for her hair. Then he hugged her until she calmed down. What happened? I finally got tired of it, and I told Trey to leave. I gave him an ultimatum. Find a job and start contributing, or it's over between us. I said that I wanted children, but not those who are already 34 years old. It all started with the fact that he found a truck that he just needed, and he wants me to make an initial payment of $5,000 and sign it up for myself. He got very angry when I said no. If he needed it, then let him earn the money to buy it himself. From that moment on, everything went wrong. He left and returned 3 hours later driving a truck, saying that in the morning I had to take my ass to the dealership to give them the check and fill out the paperwork. When I told him not even no, but damn it no, he was furious. I bet if your Yankee had asked, you would have done it for him. Absolutely, but it doesn't matter. First of all, Al has too much pride to pull off such a stunt, and he's always had a job since he was 15 years old, and would rather die of embarrassment than ask a girl for something like that. She burst into tears for a second, but then calmed down. Then he hit me in the ribs. I fell, but I got up with that brass lamp that you always thought was so ugly. He managed to put a flashlight in my eye before I hit his tiny balls with all my might. When I left, he was lying on the floor and moaning. I immediately called one of my fellow fishermen, who turned out to be a policeman, and told him what had happened. She needs to file a complaint. Right now, our 4-wheel drive cars are involved. They have a lot of work to do because of the snowstorm. But first thing tomorrow she should come if she can and arrange all the paperwork. I'll tell my people that you called because of the snowstorm and let them keep an eye on him. She's staying with you, right? She's not going anywhere. Okay. I doubt he'll try to chase her in this weather, but be on your guard. It would be nice to take a couple of pictures and send them to us while the tracks are fresh. Of course, he's not that stupid. Thanks, Hank. We'll be there as soon as the roads are clear. I'll send you the pictures in a few minutes. It turned out that he was that stupid, and the alcohol he drank lowered his IQ even more. As I said before, I live right on the lake, and my backyard overlooks it. He flew into the lake driving a new truck, hitting my truck because he couldn't stop. He spun and rolled towards the water, and when he stopped, the back was already in the lake, and no matter how hard he pressed on the gas, it did not move. I don't believe in guns, which amuses my new friends immensely, and now I thought I should obey them. He staggered up the hill, slipped, and fell 3 times before he reached the door. Adele called the police, and they told us not to open the door, so we didn't pay attention to his screams and knocking. Then he had the sense to enter my open garage, and he started banging on the door, shouting about what he was going to do to both of us. We would have let him rant, but he was smart, took a hammer out of his toolbox and started banging on the door with it. I don't have a baseball bat or anything like that, but I do have a pair of brand new ugly sticks, a type of rods known for their strength and flexibility. I grabbed one of them and Adele yanked open the door. I swung with all my strength and gave him a good slap on the cheek. He screamed and dropped the hammer, covering his face with his hands as Adele slammed the other one into his legs. His scream became primal, and he staggered back into the garage, followed by both of us. He curled up in a ball and moaned when we started on him. I don't know when we would have stopped, but a policeman arrived. He examined the damage to my truck, the other truck in the water, and came in with a gun at the ready. There was a hammer on the floor. There were dents on the door, and he shouted for us to stop. I did so, throwing the rod, but Addie managed to make 3 more good strokes before she threw her own. The deputy quickly handcuffed him while he was lying on the floor. He gave the guy a look full of disgust. "Dude, are you crying? Well, you're a rag. I'd say you need to grow balls, but this woman seems to have taken them away from you. Sir, you are under arrest for trespassing, damage to personal property, attempted break and enter, assault on a woman, common assault, and anything else I can think of on the way from this place to prison. Your life just turned to shit. Now don't say a word from here to jail to protect your rights. Do you understand?" He left it lying in the cold garage while he took readings, and then I had to help lift it and drag it into the back of the SUV. I dragged Adele into the shower to keep her warm and left her one of my t-shirts and a thick robe. She slept with me that night, for safety, but it was still very nice when she snuggled up to me. The next morning, I woke up before her and saw my mom in our kitchen, smiling like crazy. The smile disappeared when I told her what had happened. "Put the coffee on and start breakfast. I have some important motherly things to do." They didn't come out until breakfast was ready, and I was surprised at how much Adele ate. By noon, most of the road had been cleared, and Mom drove her home in my truck to pack some things. She wanted to keep her for a while until she felt safe. They returned home with gloomy faces. Mom told me the news. He trashed the apartment, broke the furniture, and threw most of her clothes in the snow. We have dismantled what could have been saved, and both our washing machines and dryers will be working for some time. She informed the apartment managers about it and told them who did it. They want to recover the damage caused to the walls and kitchen sink from him, but it seems that Adele's deposit will not be returned at the end of the lease term. The attack happened on Friday, so the asshole appeared before the judge only on Monday, and when he appeared, he almost fainted when the charges were read to him. The car dealership from which he took the car chased him because in the 2 days it took the tow truck, it completely went underwater, completely destroying the engine and the cost of the car. Even if it was repaired, it would have to be sold for recycling, and most banks will not give a loan for recycling. The truck was 3 years old and its value was estimated at $34,000. The charge of illegal entry was transferred to the category of serious crimes, which was much more serious. The damage to my truck amounted to $6,000, and since the truck he was driving had dealer plates, the repair had to be paid for by the dealership, which they immediately added to their claim. The damage to the apartment amounted to $4,000 for repairs, and its furniture and personal belongings were estimated at $3,000. Then came the assault charges. In this state, assaulting a woman is a really serious matter. Add to that 2 charges of attempted assault, attempted breaking and entering, and he ended up in the upper reaches of the creek, in full ass, not even having a boat, let alone paddles. His bail was set at $200,000, and there was no way he could pay it, not even the 10% that the guarantor would have demanded. The judge asked him why he was covered in purple stripes, and when he found out the reason, he could barely contain his laughter. Fishing rods. Boy, your face looks like it's been put through a meat grinder. Hopefully they will fade over time. Many have not faded. When he appeared in court 5 months later, there were still marks on his face and hands, and much more on his body, hidden by his clothes. He could not afford a lawyer, and the public defender told him that the best option would be a guilty plea. The district attorney has consolidated all the serious charges and dropped some lesser charges, but he will have to serve 4 years before he is eligible for parole. When all the participants in the process filed civil lawsuits against him, many decisions were made against him. When he is released, he will have debts of about $120,000. None of the participants in the process believed that they would see even a cent unless they won the lottery or inherited a lot of money. But this would not allow them to receive anything requiring payments for at least 7 years. Adele had to undergo therapy because of her fear. It took almost a year before she was able to return to normal life. She bought a gun, took security and concealed carry courses, and carries a gun almost everywhere. I even bought myself special pocket holsters that allow you to shoot without taking out your weapon. Mom kept her for 6 months, and she spent a lot of time with me, sleeping in the guest room. It usually lasted until about midnight, after which she would slip into bed and snuggle up to me. It always made me happy and sad at the same time. Adele shouted something to me, entered and looked at us, turned around and ran out. I had to close the door behind her. Bunty gave me an unkind look, wanting to know why this bitch had a key to my house. When I told her the story of my long relationship with Adele, starting in elementary school, and that her husband was my best friend, she calmed down. At the end, I told her about the incident that caused her to have a key so that she would always have a safe place. She giggled. My hero. Who would have thought that a fishing rod could become such a formidable weapon? If her ex didn't know, he does now. The police said that some of the damage we had done would remain forever. For the rest of his life, in prison and free, every time he thinks about doing something stupid, I hope it will hurt him. Call her and tell her to get her ass back here. I want to meet your sister. It took an hour to persuade her to return to the house. Bunty met her at the door, hugged her tightly and kissed her on the cheek and whispered in her ear, "He can be a little grumpy. Your return has disrupted all his plans. Well, I've heard that delayed gratification makes it sweeter, a lesson he would have to learn." Addie blushed and giggled, and when they entered the house holding hands, I realized that I was going to have a long night. They were still giggling, sharing secrets, and getting down to their 3rd bottle of wine when I gave up and went to bed. I got up early in the morning, so I put coffee on, and then I woke Bunty up with a hard kiss and a slap on the ass. "Get up, lazy girl. Breakfast will be ready in 30 minutes. She moaned and tried to wrap her head up, and I pulled the blanket off the bed, admiring her elastic little body in tiny panties and a nightgown. She growled, but I scooped her up and kissed her again, and then pointed to 3 ibuprofen pills and a glass of water on the nightstand. She swallowed the pills and washed them down with water. "Give me an hour before breakfast. I'm going to pick up your other girlfriend. I hope she feels as bad as I do." I fiddled around, drank some coffee, then put on another pot. There was the sound of a shower and a few groans, and they entered the kitchen. Bunty was wearing a new nightgown with panties, and Addie, as far as I could tell, was wearing only one of my t-shirts. They giggled at my face and teased me without pity while they had breakfast. "We're going boating this afternoon. Be ready." Then they put on shorts and t-shirts, jumped into Addie's car, and drove away. A little later, I saw a car in my mother's driveway and began to wonder if they would leave poor Hiram alone. He moved in with her a few months ago, and it wasn't until last week that I noticed Mom's new ring, with a stone. Hiram was quite successful and inclined to spoil his mother if she allowed him to. A couple of hours later, they came laughing. "Mom is getting married," Adele chuckled. "And what gave her away? The fact that her left hand is practically dragging on the ground from the weight of the stone on her finger? And the fact that she's been in a very good mood lately? I can't get anything out of you girls, can I?" They rolled their eyes and started discussing wedding plans. Mom and Hiram came down to us and announced that they were coming with us, so we set off with high hopes and a fridge full of wine and beer. Hiram drank more than I've ever seen, and we started talking. "Are you nervous?" "Absolutely." Your mother is a real woman, and I hope I can make her happy in the future. It's too late for that. You've already managed to make her as happy as I haven't seen since my father died. I can hear her sighing and looking at me with big eyes. You know, it's a pity that your poor mother is getting married before you. It looks like I'm going to have to depend on Lisa and Jerry for grandchildren. These are Hiram's children from his first marriage, he chuckled. On the other hand, she has already taken 2 children from Lisa. She spent most of yesterday baking with them and teaching them to call her grandma, smiling every time they said it. Nevertheless, there are 2 beautiful women in front of us. Any of them will make an excellent daughter-in-law. Think about it. Damn, are you going there too? I'm sorry. Bunty and Adele became best friends. In fact, I was a little jealous of the time they spend together. They became a great couple. Adele is a big girl with long blonde hair, and Bunty is petite, 1 meter 52 and weighs 44 kilograms. She cuts her black hair short, which is highlighted by the diamond studs that I gave her for her birthday. We met at one of the corporate parties. She is a salesperson, but they were invited, and she was chosen to display the flag. At first, I thought she was a child, until she turned around and I got a good look at her body, dressed in a simple top and shorts, and the first thing that came to my mind. Now I know what a goddess looks like left in the dryer for a long time. The image made me grin, and she smiled back. My assistant, who was a good friend of my mom, introduced us to each other. Mom got her involved in her desire to marry me, and from time to time I had to draw boundaries, which she immediately crossed, grinning. You're not going to fire me. You said the other day that I'm the best at my job. Besides, if you do, your mother will make your life unbearable until you bring me back. She thinks I need a pay raise. Maybe you'd like to discuss it with her. And now, as I said, young Sayira, the new employee in accounting, she's just a cutie. And he's lonely too. I bet she'd be glad if someone showed her around. Then arrange it, just not with me. She doesn't work for me, she works for her boss. And if we get close and then break up, something bad can happen. I will not fish in the company's pond. She sighed. Bev said you were stubborn. Forget about Sayre. There are a lot of women in this city who would like you. Me? Yes, you or someone like you. He is young, professional, has made a good career, with a good home and salary, and your eyes aren't bad either. In general, you are a good candidate for a husband. You lose a few points because you're a Yankee, but I'm sure they're willing to make an effort to teach you. But despite this, I still wanted to meet this 1-meter-sized girl with a cap. She seemed pleased to meet me and then turned to Gladys. Am I the 23rd or the 4th? Gladys blushed, and it seemed original to me. 26th, but I don't care. Alicia Bunty's real name smiled at my confusion. That's how many times you've been introduced to suitable young girls. There are different bets in your company. What will be the lucky number? How soon you will get married? The time and gender of the first child? My God, you guys are having fun here. She shrugged her shoulders. The town is small. There's not much going on here. Let's get down to business. I am 27. I have never been married. I have 3 brothers and 1 sister. I have a good job, and of course, I am very good in bed. Useful information. I'm sure you know everything about me, down to the size of my underwear. But I'll tell you the main thing. I'm 34. I was married once, and it didn't end well. I own a house on the lake. I like to fish and spend time on the water, and if we start dating, I'll determine the level of your attractiveness from the original source. You prefer knitted boxers with a waist of 86. Lake fishing is boring for you. A stream and spinning are better. You'd rather hunt fish than just sit in a boat, sipping beer and hoping that something on your hook will commit suicide. Well, then we'll stand by our opinion. There is something soothing about sitting in the middle of the night and listening to the sounds of nature under a full moon. If you are a stalker, a persistent stalker, then I am more of a predator, sitting in ambush, knowing the character and habits of my victim and silently waiting for the opportunity to strike without warning. Then I'll keep a close eye on you. I don't want to fall into a trap. Let's get some water, find a shady place, and discuss everything in more detail. I chuckled. A typical Southerner who prefers to do business in the shade when it's hot and in the sun when it's cold. Practicality has been developed over the centuries. I turned to talk to Gladys, but found that she was gone. Where did Gladys go? I can still see her smirk. I probably decided to tell the one who chose 26 that he will soon become much richer. That's how our relationship began. We talked for another hour until it was time for her to leave. I got up to say goodbye, and she rushed into my arms, showering me with kisses. Then she pulled back and grinned. Just for the sake of trying it out. Don't you have a tingling sensation in your lips? I tried to be careful. I didn't want you to get burned at the first contact. I was still trying to find the right words when she ran away. Turning around, I saw Gladys and 6 office ladies grinning after me. Not a word, Gladys, I said, leaving, heard laughter and looked at her, noticing that she was taking out her phone. Mom will get a full report before I get in my truck. Bunty showed up the following Wednesday. I looked up and saw her standing in the doorway. Her smile made me feel good. Come on, you're taking me to lunch. Somewhere nice, I know you can afford it. Oh, and when we pass Gladys, expect a big kiss. I've already started marking my territory. It was a really big kiss, and when she let me go, I grinned at Gladys. I'll be back later. Gladys, send a text message if anything happens. She muttered, Yes, boss, fumbling for her phone. Gladys, if my mom needs to contact me, I'm at Honey Hog. Alicia was still laughing when we walked out the door. Lunch turned into dinner. I took her to the nearest big city because the choice of entertainment in a small one was, to put it mildly, small. I think she enjoyed the theatrical performance in front of the dining audience, and we took a short walk before heading home. She felt very good being on my arm, despite the height difference. Over the next few weeks, we talked and corresponded a lot. I felt that we had reached some kind of milestone when she invited me to Sunday dinner, lunch for us non-Southerners, to introduce me to her parents. I think they liked me. Her father deployed the kitchen equipment, and 5 Boston loaves were grilled, along with 3 chicken and brisket. It's not worth making a fire for just a couple of cigarette butts, he told me when I was stirring the coals and he was busy with the meat. I watched and studied because I wanted to be able to repeat what he was doing. We talked about all kinds of meat rubbers and favorite sauces. He was surprised that I prefer the vinegar and pepper flakes option to sweet Piedmontese sauces. We stayed with him for about 45 minutes before a very angry woman appeared in front of us. That's enough, Daddy. Let him go. Mom hasn't gotten to him yet. He kissed her cheek and grinned. He's not bad, honey, for a Yankee. I wondered if this was a sign of approval. Alicia's mother is almost as petite as herself, but she has blonde hair. She is sweet and unassuming, but when the conversation ended, I realized that these are the methods of interrogation in the Gestapo. She smiled sweetly and kissed me on the cheek, telling me to go help her husband while they were cooking side dishes. I took a couple of bear claws, Danish almond buns stuffed with fruit jam, and started nibbling on them while he sliced the brisket. He hadn't touched the chickens yet, and when her brothers showed up, it reminded me of documentaries about hyenas butchering a carcass. When they were full, they all sat down in rocking chairs and chairs on the porch. Bunty led me to the swing where she could snuggle up to me. We talked about everything in the world, and we talked about fishing. Suddenly it turned out that her brothers, their wives, and in the case of one of them, the girl, were going to go on our boat next Saturday. Dad and Mom were going to sail with us next Saturday. Later, as I was walking her home, I couldn't help but tease, Our boat? Yes, you stupid man, our boat. I need you to get used to the fact that I'm clinging to you with all my claws and I'm not going to let go. Do I have the right to vote? Yes. You need to learn to say yes, dear, quite often. But if you can't feel what I feel, take me home. Otherwise, we'll sleep in your old my new house tonight. This is a hint of what I'm suggesting. Her clothes never got inside the house. The next morning I had to go out, collect it, and warm it up in the dryer. She might have been small, but she was very flexible, and she tied me in knots. The beauty of a little woman is that she can be treated like a doll, and Bunty encouraged me. Yes, that's it. Use me, take whatever you want. She's yours now, and if you don't have the manhood to take her, you don't deserve her. The next morning, I tested this theory by waking her up. Honey, I need to take a shower. What you need to do is stop talking while I satisfy you. I slapped her tiny ass to emphasize it. She snuggled up to me. That's never going to happen. If you do everything right, I'll scream like a banshee, and if you don't want to listen to my dirty talk, you'll have to shut my mouth. The session was quite long, and she knew the words that would make a lumberjack blush. But at the end, she was already cooing, and when we finished, she sighed and hugged me. I love you, baby. Then she realized what she had said, and she screamed, running into the bathroom. I flew right in after her, and she tried to hide in the shower. Say it again. I didn't mean to. I slapped her ass, and she screamed, but not with pleasure. If you don't want to have a red ass, say it again. I'm a whimper. Love you. Sorry. I should kick your ass blue for apologizing. If she wasn't so beautiful and I didn't like her so much, I would have done so. Now listen to me. You're going to tell me that at least every half hour until I take you home, okay? When I think you're serious, I'll say the same thing back to you. She was already crying hard by then, so I turned on the shower and gently washed her while she sniffed, kissing different parts of her body, just to make sure they were clean. By the time we were done, Bunty had regained consciousness and was smiling again. She put on one of my shirts and it came down to her knees. I noticed that only one button was fastened. Her phone rang and she grinned. I love you. That's better. So, are we having breakfast? She giggled and ran around the kitchen, getting to know her while I finished cooking. Looking at her plate, she grinned. Corn porridge? I like the taste of it. Shut up and eat. While we were washing the dishes, the doorbell rang. I'll open it. She took off and I was right behind her. At least she buttoned her shirt. Mom was standing there and looked at us questioningly, and then she grinned. Introduce me, honey. I was deprived of this opportunity. Bunty grabbed her arm. Hi, Mom. I'm Alicia, but most people call me Bunty because of my size. I'm your future daughter-in-law when your son is smart enough to propose to me. Mom's smile spread across her face and she hugged her. Sometimes he slows down a little, honey, but he usually gets where he needs to go. She stopped to kiss me on the cheek. Make us some fresh coffee, honey. Alicia and I may be late. I'm sure you have some urgent business outside that needs to be done in an hour or so, right? Damn. I was expelled from my own home, but every good general knows that when he is outnumbered and unarmed, the best option is to leave the battlefield. So I put on a coffee pot and went to wash the boat. When I got up from the dock, Mom was already walking out the door. She smiled and kissed me on the cheek. Then she warned, Don't screw up. Bunty smiled, but before she could speak, the phone rang again. I love you. I hugged her and kissed her on the cheek. I love you too, baby. Have you and Mom set a date yet? When she stopped crying, I grinned again. No, we have to come to an agreement with my mom. I'll call her right now. We'll be at the house with our moms until tonight, so order a takeaway and we'll all be at your place by 6. Then she walked out the door and left. I went on a boat, sailed without any purpose, thinking about life. Then I decided that fate was giving me a golden chance for happiness, and I had to be sure that I would use it successfully. The Chinese food arrived immediately after my return, and 5 minutes later they were already walking through the door. The binoculars are the same. They had reinforcements with them, Adele and Bunty's older sister. She was the first child and Alicia was the last, so there are 8 years between them. She is also about 1.5 meters tall. I smiled at Alicia. Maybe they should have given you the nickname Ranty, Shorty. I hope the palm print on my cheek disappears before I have to go to work. By the time I came to work, everything was already known. I received a letter from one of the managers who thanked me for my determination. It looks like he's the one who put it on 26. Gladys kissed me hard. Don't forget to tell everyone that I introduced you. When is the wedding? I don't know. Didn't the girls call you last night to get your opinion? I'll just show up when I'm told. She blossomed a little. We are thinking about the last weekend in June. It's going to be pretty hot by then, but we can handle it. Here's your solution. Well, it looks like I'm not in control of my life anymore. It annoyed me, and it didn't help the way they were pushing their plans. 2 weeks passed, and my mother, sister, Adele, Gladys, and some others, whom I did not know exactly, began to tell me about the wedding plans again. They asked my opinion twice, and then they laughed at me, contradicting me, and I suddenly got tired of it. I went to the door. Where are you going? We're not done yet. First of all, I do not know where. I'm just going away from here. And we're much closer to completion than you think. Alicia, where's your ring? Have I ever asked, Alicia, will you marry me? Let's not guess. No, you don't have a ring, and no, I've never asked that question. You just assumed it and left. And then all of you drove over me like a tram over a coin on the rails, and you expect me to just nod and say, yes, ma'am? That's not going to happen. Not now, and never. You need to think about it for a few days and come back to me. Think carefully. Their eyes grew wider and wider, and both the mothers and Alicia looked like they were about to faint. I went out the door and drove away, leaving ruts on the grass because they blocked my way. I bet when they tried to call me, they felt really stupid when the receiver turned up on the coffee table. Before returning, I was away for 4 days, taking time off from work and taking 2 days off. It took me 3 trips to the ATM to pay for a new wardrobe and a couple of motel rooms. I drove north, deciding that there was no way they would look that way. I was surprised when on the third day I was stopped by a policewoman from the state, checking my registration and license. "Sir, do you know that you have been reported missing?" "No, I don't know at all. What do you mean I'm missing? I'm an adult, I don't have any attachments. Why should anyone care where I am? My company knows because I took a vacation, but they are the only ones I have to report to." She stepped back, sensing the irritation in my voice, then returned the documents to me. "Very well, sir. I will cancel the missing person announcement. I don't know what's going on in your life, and frankly, it's not the state's business, but someone was worried enough to fill out an application. It might be nice to call home, but it's your choice. Drive carefully and have a nice day." When I drove off, she was already talking on the radio, and I turned around at the next overpass and drove back the same way I came here. When I walked through the office doors on Wednesday, Gladys's expression was priceless. "To my office immediately. And leave your cell phone in your desk drawer if you want to keep working here, Gladys." I watched her take it and put it away on the table. She looked like she was going to be executed when I made her sit down. "A few new rules, Gladys. I like you. You're doing a great job, and you're going to be hard to replace. But if you pry into my personal affairs, if you tell Mom and Alicia about every step I take, it will happen. Do you understand?" She looked completely unhappy but nodded her head. "Not enough. I need you to say it out loud, I promise. Everything that happens in the office will stay in the office, and I will never interfere in your personal life again." "Thank you, Gladys. Now remind me what I missed." While we were talking about business, she relaxed and moved on to eliminating minor fires that happened while I was away. An hour later, she called me. "Reggie wants to meet you when you have time." Reggie is the factory director, and when you have time means immediately. He asked me how my vacation was, offered me coffee, and then seemed unusually nervous. "Listen, Al, I don't want to get involved in—" "Which one of them bothered you? Mom, Alicia, Gladys? None of them. Hiram texted me about how upset he was." He stopped, surprised that I stood up. "You know, Reggie, I like you, and I like it here. For me, this is a dream job. But I made a vow to myself that if my personal and professional lives ever intertwined, I would walk away from both. Will 2 weeks be enough? If not, I can give you a month, but no more. I'll send you and the HR department a statement as soon as I get back to my desk. Goodbye, Reggie." His eyes widened, and he muttered uncertainly as I walked out. He called me as soon as I returned to my office, and I turned on the speakerphone, rummaging through my folders, taking away everything personal. He went from pleading to demanding, and I laughed. "What are you threatening me with, Reg? My job? This ship sailed 30 minutes ago. Put pressure on me and I'll go to the corporation and ask there, since when has the personal life of an employee become interesting to the vice president? How do you think it's going to work?" He hung up the phone. Gladys burst into tears when I left the office at the end of the day. Then she started apologizing. "You can stop it, Gladys. I know you didn't mean me any harm, and I don't hold it against you because I think you really thought you were pursuing my interests. But learn a lesson from this. It doesn't matter who it will be in the future, but think carefully before you interfere in his life. Till tomorrow." I knew Mom would be watching me, but it took 2 hours before she had the courage to come. She looked as indecisive as I had ever seen her, her strong-willed character temporarily muted. "Hi, Mom," I said, opening the door and kissing her on the cheek. "Do you want coffee?" The tears started to drip even before the coffee was brewed. "Have we ruined everything?" "Not really, but you did a great job at the beginning. Did you really think that you could please me? I keep forgetting that you're just like your father, happy, compliant, until something goes against your beliefs. It didn't occur to any of us that you might react that way. Poor Alicia is shattered. She didn't work all week because she could only cry. Do you still love her?" "Yes, but it seems that she loves her ego a little more than she loves me." "Don't say that. This girl loves you with all her heart and soul. If you had told her now that you wanted her to put on a matting bag and smear dirt on her face in front of the altar, she would have done so as long as it meant a wedding." "An interesting image. Let me think for a minute. No, I don't like it. Is there anything else?" "Just this one." The slap made my ears ring and my eyes blurry. "If she leaves you, you deserve it. Act with your heart for a change, not with logic. Yes, we all got carried away, but I think you gave us a jolt that none of us will ever forget, bringing us back to reality. I love you, son, but at this moment I don't really like you." I was still trying to collect my thoughts when she slammed the door behind her, assuming that I agreed with her. I didn't like her very much at that moment either. 20 minutes later, I called Bunty and heard her gasp when she realized it was me. To my house. This is the hour, if you want to keep our relationship going. 15 minutes passed, and I saw her talking on the phone as she got out of the car. Undoubtedly, she got the news from her mother. Her hair was disheveled, her eyes were dull, and her clothes just seemed to hang on her. I opened the door, and it suddenly occurred to me that I was tired of seeing fear in a woman's eyes when she was talking to me. I pointed her to the sofa, and there were tears in her eyes as I sat down in the armchair. So what have we learned from this mess, Alicia? It hurt her a lot. I never called her by her first name unless it was about something serious. I don't know about you, but I've learned a lot of new things in the last few days. I realized that you have a line that I'd better not cross, and I need to know where it is so that this doesn't happen again. I also realized that my attitude, which helps me so much in business, does not work in a personal situation. I didn't mean to push you away at all, darling, but the more you let me, the more I took you for granted. It won't happen again. She ran out of steam and I started. Do you know what I've learned? I realized that I take love too lightly. I just wanted you to be happy, but not when it makes me sad or angry, especially angry. I'm sorry if this took you by surprise, but did you really think that I would continue like this? Do you know what I think? I think we need to learn to communicate a little better. Otherwise, we are doomed from the very beginning. I absolutely intend to spend the rest of my life with you. It's hard to speak with someone else's tongue in my mouth, so I stopped trying. We didn't immediately fall into bed and engage in wild conciliatory lovemaking. It happened the next morning. Mostly, we hugged and talked. We were talking about children, and I said that I would like to have at least 2, and she laughed. I'm the youngest of 5. Mom is the third oldest of the 7, and Dad has 4 brothers and 3 sisters. I don't think I need that much, but 4 is a good round number. She moved in with me the following week, so we were practically an established couple by the time of the wedding. I returned to work after a call from the executive vice president from the main office. I'll see you at work on Monday. Reggie told me what happened, and I'm reading a little bit between the lines. I can assure you that from now on, your personal life will remain private. You have the future, Al. In 2 years, Reggie is retiring, and we have already decided that you will take his place. I'm also giving you a 5% pay raise to show you how serious I am. Now go back to work. My relationship with Reggie never recovered, but we got along well. Reggie had a big send-off when he retired, and I was just settling into my new office when Gladys came in grinning. I took her with me, raising my salary due to new responsibilities. I already knew that grin. She knows something I don't, and she's about to burst. Your wife is here. Should I let her in? Just for fun, I should have told you not to let her in, but it won't end well. I was wondering what this was about. If Bunty wants to see me, she usually just walks in. She came in and both mothers were with her, and that scared me. She grinned. Relax, dear, I hope the news is good. I just got back from the doctor. We're going to have a baby. In 7 months, you'll be holding your son or daughter in your arms, or maybe both. There are twins in our family. I almost fainted. We tried for a whole year, and 8 months later we went to get tested. Her doctor laid it out to us. Your swimmers can get to the Olympic Games, Elle. Alicia, if you were even more fertile, you could grow crops in your womb. You guys just need to relax. Your firstborn is about to appear. And here they are. Yes, they are. Her family did have twins, and now we do. The moms were over the moon, and Addie cried her eyes out when we handed them to her. She could still have children, but the window was closing, and after the cruel asshole, she became much more careful in relationships. Bunty took all the maternity leave she could, and when it ended, she just didn't return to work. We could quite afford it, and it seems that this is the best way. If it got too hard for her and she felt overwhelmed, one of the moms would immediately give her a break. One day when the twins were almost a year old, we ran into Juliet on the street. I was pushing a first-class double stroller that Mom had given us, and Bunty was walking next to me holding my hand. She looked at Bunty, at the kids, and at me, and then burst into tears. I suspect she regretted the missed opportunities. Bunty asked who she was and then smiled sadly. Whoever didn't make it, he was late. I guess she's regretting now that she didn't make the best choice, but her time is past. You're mine now, and nothing will ever change that. Mom was still close to Juliet and loved Tony and Mark very much. Sometimes she would leave them at her place for the weekend, and they always ended up at my house. And if the weather was right, we almost always went fishing. I still threw birthday parties for them, starting them again the second year after Juliet and I broke up. As they got older, they and their friends stayed overnight, and that always included fishing for catfish. Juliet would come to the party and then disappear as soon as it was over. She had a relationship. She even married a guy she dated for a week, but it ended after about 18 months, and she seems to have stopped looking. Although I still worked from home, I was promoted, and now I have become a regional manager in charge of 4 facilities. The salary was raised quite well, and we put most of it in the bank, using part of it to replenish college funds. I just received my first annual bonus for a new position, and it turned out to be enough to shock me. Adele was 31 years old by that time. She was still slim, still beautiful, and she still had a killer ass. She was often molested. She smiled, danced with a guy if she liked him, but she turned most of them off. One became quite aggressive and wouldn't let go of her hand. I think the look on my face told him it was a bad idea, but he really should have been watching Bunty. Her legs were tiny, but I bet it hurt like hell when she stuck the sharp toe of her heel right into his balls. He deflated like a balloon out of air, and Bunty and Addie watched him with a wide grin on their faces. We left soon after, and he was still lying on the floor. Apparently, he doesn't have many friends. The ladies surprised me by leaving Hiram and me with the kids while they went shopping all day, had lunch, and briefly rested on the beach topless. It was after lunch and 4 drinks, and they forgot the sunscreen. They came giggling and cuddling up to each other, gave me a bunch of kisses, and immediately went to bed. The next day, I noticed that they were uncomfortable, and found out that they were all slightly burned. Our hotel has a private beach, so the first thing they did after lunch was take off their tops and put on sunscreen. They laughed at my expression, and then blushed when I told the moms that they still had it, and Adele was as impressive as I always imagined her to be. Bunty looked a little annoyed until I picked her up in my arms and hugged her to me, swallowing one breast, sucking hard, and coming off with a loud smack. The other ladies screamed as she ran into the ocean, and they were right behind her. I'm sure there's been some talk at the country club. Hiram just stood there with his mouth open. I bet the girls at the country club faced discontent, and rumors about their tan spread. Many ladies eventually demanded a vacation somewhere in the sun, preferably without clothes. The children had just turned 3 years old, and they were trying to prove that perpetual motion is not just a theory. I was on a business trip with an overnight stay at one of the manufacturing plants, because there were several problems there, and this began to affect production. The problem turned out to be the management, and as a result, I stayed one more night to put out the fire, firing the assistant manager for inappropriate actions and conversations with my employees, both men and women. Some of them knew that if it came to complaints, their word would be against his, and recorded some of them on tape. I listened to one of them, then escorted him out of the building and forbade him to appear on the territory, called the administrator on duty and the leading specialist, and left. I always called home every day, and I called in the morning when I was leaving to tell Bunty when I would be home, but the call went to voicemail. It happened from time to time, so it didn't bother me too much. What bothered me was the number of cars in my driveway. As a result, I parked on the street. There were a lot of friends and relatives there, and I thought it was some kind of surprise party. Then Mom and Addie appeared with red eyes and in tears. It was stupid, pointless, and it took me a long time to come to terms with it. Mom came to pick up the children and took them shopping with her. She mostly did this to give Bunty a little break during the day. We bought a new boat, and she decided to take the time to clean it while she could. It was early March, and the day turned out to be warm, although the wind was quite gusty. Mom found her floating face down in the water by the pier. When I pulled her ashore, it became clear that it was too late, but she immediately called 911 and did an indirect heart massage until paramedics arrived. The doctors did their best, but it was too late. The official cause of death is drowning. She had a decent-sized bruise on her forehead, and authorities assumed that due to a gust of wind, she fell off the boat, hit her head on the side or pier, and drowned unconscious. I barely remember that time. There were a lot of people at the funeral. Bunty was very popular in society, and I was a prominent figure in business circles. I don't think anyone came to the funeral for business reasons, rather to express their support. She was 30 years old when she died. It took 2 weeks before I returned to work and probably 3 months before I started working at full strength again, but the top management did not say a word. The vice president, who believed in me so much, begged me to go to a psychologist's consultation, saying that the company would pay for it. Addie practically dragged me to the sessions, but after 5, I managed everything. Both mothers took turns caring for Johnny and Carol, and Adele came every day. I ended up decorating her bedroom for her because she stayed with me 3 or 4 times a week to look after me and spend time with the kids. One day, almost a year later, I asked if she was tired of us, and she surprised me by bursting into tears. Mom didn't seem happy either. 2 years later, I surprised Addie by telling her that we were going to a Christmas dance at the country club. She looked hesitant and asked if I wanted to go with someone else who might be interested in me romantically. Her expression was priceless when I replied that that was why I was taking her with me. She burst into tears and ran into her bedroom, slamming the door. I was sitting on the couch and trying to figure out how I could have misunderstood her so unhappy. The door opened and she almost timidly sat down next to me. "Are you sure?" "Absolutely. I've always admired you, Addie, and I don't just mean physically. You're one of the kindest people I've ever met. You help friends, family, even complete strangers if you think they deserve it. We have always loved each other as friends. It was just the wrong time and serious insecurity on my part that prevented us from being together." A smile played on her lips. "Lack of confidence? You've always scared me a little. Your brains, not to mention your beauty, put you out of my league. It seemed to me that I could never be enough for you, but as the British say, who doesn't take risks doesn't win. So I finally plucked up the courage and tell you about my feelings. I loved my first wife, and I loved Bunty much more, but she's gone, and the mourning is over. You're here. You're the only mom the kids know, and they love you, maybe even more than I do. I can't imagine the rest of my life without you. Maybe you'll think about it." I almost fainted from the kiss. It was so passionate. When she finally let me take a breath of air, she smiled. "After thinking about it, I think you might be right, so I have a suggestion for you. As for us, let me think about it. Yes, we will go to the Christmas ball, and Grandma will keep our kids for the night. We will never sleep in separate beds again. Do you understand? Now is the time to start practicing saying, 'Yes, honey.' 'Yes, honey.' Good boy. Let's practice some more, okay? You're going to give me a ring someday, aren't you? 'Yes, honey.' Soon? 'Yes, honey.' One last thing before we end this conversation. We are not getting any younger, and although we love twins, I think we need to have another baby soon. 'Yes, honey.' You are such a good boy. Now, before I call your mom and tell her the news she's been wanting to hear for a year, I think you should practice kissing. Agree?" Yes, Mom was over the moon with happiness, and plans began to be made immediately. I thought it would be a little awkward with Bunty's parents, so I called her mom. I heard a grin in his voice. "I already know everything, you fool. We are happy for you, and this is exactly what our daughter would like, to see you as someone you love. Your mom and I have everything under control, so don't worry. I know that Addie's parents passed away, so we decided to adopt her. I will perform the duties of the bride's mother, and her husband will lead her down the aisle. Your little ones will be a flower girl and a ring bearer. Well, that's fine. The 2 Bunty brothers were best men, and when I stood at the altar that May afternoon and watched Addie float down the aisle with our children in front, dressed up in a beautiful dress and a small suit, I knew that I would never be happier than at that moment. Even better, there was a 2-month bulge under the dress. The doctor decided that there might be twins there.